Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is going to be a really light and hopefully fun session. I welcome any questions and feedback. You can put your hands up anytime. I'm going to just, some of you will know, I'm a family doctor in town. I can hardly believe it, but I've been working for 17 years in Bracebridge and Gravenhurst. So time is flying by. So my topic is neuroplasticity and brain function. And I don't have any special training in this. I just really liked the idea. I thought it was very interesting because people are living longer. And I see a lot of people in hospital with having had a stroke or a broken hip or a fall. And it's really interesting how things are so interconnected. So hopefully we'll learn by the end how to make new neural pathways and improve our memory and cognition all the way up into our later years. So neuroplasticity is basically neuro means brain, and plasticity means something that can be molded or shaped or changed. And this was the actual word is first coined by William James, and he had it in his Principles of Psychology textbook in 1890. But it was often forgotten, not carried further for a long time. And actually, right up until the 1970s, neuroscientists did not understand or know that the brain could change in your adult life. This is a cute picture of a cow that's being trained because I also found research that there was an Italian scientist who back in 1793 published a paper where he was actually an anatomist. So he loved to dissect animals. And he put these cows in pairs, and he would train one half of the pair. And then when he dissected their brains, the cows that had been trained had larger brains, larger cerebellum than their untrained partners. So he actually was the first person to document that you could change your brain by adding stimuli or by learning things. So this cow here has been trained to touch the ball as part of a task. So one thing that we now know is that your brain is constantly changing. It's kind of like how it blows my mind that your body's skeleton is always being torn apart and rebuilt. Like your bones are always being broken down, built back up in little tiny bits. And same with the brain. The brain connections are constantly being put together and taken apart in different pathways. So that just reiterates the fact that scientists used to think there was a fixed outcome, that if you had a brain injury or a stroke or something changed in your brain, that was the way it was going to be forever. And we now know that cells can regenerate. We know that certain cells of the brain can actually regrow or grow further in your adulthood. So brain plasticity, the changing brain allows you to learn skills, to gather information, to adapt to a change, recover from your brain injury. You can rewire your brain. That's kind of like a catchphrase people are hearing nowadays. It's also, one of those phrases they use in the ever-growing neurocognitive, field where people are selling all their doodads and products. You don't need to do that. You can do it in your own way, in your own environment. So and actually there's evidence that after sitting through this presentation, you'll leave with a changed brain, unless you fall asleep. So hopefully you don't. Your brain is amazing. This is a really busy slide. I just thought it was kind of cool. It had some neat facts about the brain, which I'll just kind of pick my favorites. Like this one here, the brain weighs 3 pounds approximately. So if the average person is 150 pounds, they're saying your brain is 2% of your body weight, but your brain requires 25% of the oxygen, 25% of the energy, and 20% of blood flow goes to your brain. So this is a really highly active part of your body. So the basic part of a brain is the neuron. Neuron is one nerve cell, which is in the top left corner, and it kind of looks like a sea creature. They can be long or short, and they're like a wire. They're like electrical wires. And the left-hand side, that end of it collects the information, sends it down the wire, and the other end attaches to the next cell and sends it onwards. And this is just like a little picture of this, the way the networks are in your brain. They're just like crisscrosses of wires in every different direction. Kind of like, the back of your parents' DVD player or VHS player. I can't believe there's 100 billion neurons in the brain. I was reading somewhere that 1 grain of sand, if you had the size of your brain in 1 grain of sand, would contain 1 million nerve cells. I find that just amazing. So there is your one neuron connecting to the next neuron. And you might know the word synapse, where the first nerve attaches to the second nerve. There is a connection point called a synapse. And they don't actually touch physically. They actually have a little cleft where the original cell will send little chemical messengers to the next cell, and then the message gets transferred down. This is a picture of just like a showing you that more than one cell can converge on another cell, and that the middle neuron can actually send messages to more than one cell on the other end. So there's different ways that the messages pass through the cells. So this is on the right-hand side. It just shows you that you can make new pathways by doing new things or doing something that your brain's never done before. It's learning something new. And then repetition strengthens your pathway. And you'll see in the bottom picture that the pathways that you no longer use anymore will get used less, and then that path will not be won't be as strong, or won't be as wide, or doesn't have the same girth. And I kind of picture it like you're walking a path in a field. The path you walk on gets trodden, and then the grass doesn't grow there, so you've got this big path. And the one you don't go on will get overgrown again with the grass. And this is just an example of how your brain can change the way it sends messages. This is talking about pruning. I didn't know that brains could prune themselves. Just like, you might hear that, the story from gardeners or in the Bible that you need to prune your trees to bear more fruit. And the brain does the same thing. If you look at the left, you'll see that in an unborn child, you've got a few nerve cells starting to make small connections. And then in a newborn, you've got more. And actually, it kind of peaks like in your toddler and childhood years. And then your brain actually pulls back and starts pruning things away, because it'll prune in different ways. So one, some of the cells actually die. There's a way that you have like a very controlled cell death, where your body kills specific cells and then allows new cells to grow. There's ways where it can strengthen a path that's already there. It can create a new path or send a new branch out to a new direction and touch a new cell, or it can retract. So you do have changes that are happening all the time. And the idea behind rewiring your brain is that every experience you have allows you to make new neural pathways. And these can happen in short time frames. It doesn't take months. It takes minutes to hours to make new pathways. And the examples I found were things like you go to a different coffee shop, or you travel on a path that's different than your usual path that you take to work. Or like they mentioned, you hike a mountain in a different country you've never been to. So your brain is getting stimuli it's never had before, and you're making new pathways. And then they compare it to going to the gym, where if you strengthen different muscle groups, they will get stronger over time. This is a picture called homunculus, and this was in my anatomy textbooks when I was in medical school. It means little man in Latin or German or one of the other languages, but it's basically on the top of your brain. Everybody has a representation along a strip. The left side is your motor, and the right side is your sensory. So your motor is like when your brain tells you to do something, like move your fingers. And then the sensory is like if you touch something, or if you touch something hot, you'll feel that, and the message goes up to your brain. So there's a representation on your brain of all these different parts. But you'll notice that the areas with the most nerve fibers or the most sensitivity have the largest area. So if you look on the right for sensory, your tongue has a large area, your lips have a large area, your fingers and hands do. And this makes sense when you're, examining a patient, because we have this test called 2-point discrimination, where you touch somebody's skin with 2 points, and you find the distance where they can finally tell that there's 2, not just 1. And if you do it on someone's back, like you could have them, a centimeter or 2 apart, and they wouldn't know it's 1 or 2 because you don't have that kind of fine tuning. But on your fingers, you can tell if they're a millimeter apart that you've got 2, not just 1 point. So this is just to sort of demonstrate one of the ways we know that there is neuroplasticity. On the next slide, it just shows how on the left-hand picture, there's a normal brain where there are mapping, we call it mapping, where individual parts of the brain have certain amounts of area for different parts of your body. And on the right-hand picture, you've got a person who's got a forearm amputated, like missing a hand and a forearm. And the area on the brain on the left that would normally be mapped out to provide sensory and motor to that hand no longer has any input because the hand is no longer there. So those areas don't get used very much, and they start to fade away. But your brain will never waste an area. It'll allow other parts of your body to take up those areas and use those nerve cells for their own purpose. And you can see this also in people who are, somebody who is a musician or somebody who maybe does a lot of work with their hands. They'll have a bigger area for their hands on their map of their brain because they've used it more. This is a map of London, England. And you can see there are so many roads. This is just a study that was done in 2006 about neuroplasticity. And did you guys know that if you want to be a taxi driver in London, UK, you have to train for 2 full years? Like you have to go to college to be a taxi driver there. And they have to memorize thousands upon thousands of streets and side streets and memorize which ones are one way and not one way. And they did it. This woman, Dr. McGuire, did a study, and she compared the brains of taxi drivers to bus drivers. And the bus drivers have a 6-week course, and they do a set route on a set schedule. So they are, driving in, a busy city, but they don't have to adapt to changing traffic patterns, and they don't have to find little tiny spots on the map that they have never been to before. So when she did her study, she was, thankfully they didn't have to be dissected. This is all through MRI, functional MRI. So they found that the people who were the taxi drivers had a larger hippocampus, which is your memory, an area that helps you set down your memories. So she found that it was also related to the number of years the person had worked and done that job. So that basically proving that your brain is plastic. It can grow, it can change, it can add more cells, it can become more robust if you use it more. I just want to take a little sidestep away from neuroplasticity, but kind of related. This is one of the things that got me interested in this topic, is that we do a lot of studies on people, and we try and find out if I do A or B, what will happen. This is basically a study that is retrospective, or just an observational study where you're examining groups of people that are physically and cognitively superior to the rest of the world and trying to figure out why. So this is the author of the study, Dan Bettner. So he is a National Geographic journalist, and he started doing research for National Geographic on basically he started in Japan, in Okinawa, which is a group of islands that are south of Japan, a little bit separate, but he started investigating why people there live so long and have lower rates of dementia, and their average life expectancy is 10 years more than people in USA, which is amazing. and they have the highest number of centenarians. Those are people over 100 or in their hundreds than anywhere else. So there were 5 original cities in this blue zones, and they were called blue zones because he and another researcher were putting blue dots with a marker on a map, and then they realized they just called them blue zones. There's nothing blue about them per se. But these are the 5 original blue zones, and each one of these areas has a higher number of centenarians and they have lower rates of cancer, they have lower rates of getting Alzheimer's, they have lower rates of heart disease. So he did a study just to look at what is different about these groups of people. And that does also go along with your brain health, because these people have, I guess, healthier brains, and they're living longer, and they're not losing their memory and their cognition. You'll notice there's only one in North America over there in Loma Linda. So has anyone here watched this show on TV called Blue Zones Live to 100? No? Okay, it's really interesting if you do. This is just a quick picture of Japan, and then the arrow at the bottom of the map is that little tiny section, that's Okinawa. So it is a bit separate from the main part of the island. Different vegetation, different culture, a little bit different than the mainland. So the highlighted part I just wrote on the right-hand side so you can read it. Residents are less likely to develop cancer, heart disease, and dementia than Americans. And the women have a life expectancy of 87 years, almost 10 more than the average American woman. So that's one of the interesting factors. One of the things they talk about they talk about various factors with each of these communities, but one of them is the diet. So they have these special purple potatoes that grow everywhere on the island, and people eat that as their staple. So they eat 60% of their calories come from this purple potato. And we probably know from our blueberries and our acai berries that your purple fruits and vegetables have more antioxidants and are good for your longevity. So yeah, here they're saying that they have 1/5 the rate of cardiovascular disease. That's like only 20% of comparing it to the USA. And they have other benefits with their social networks. They talk about something called moai, which is these connections they have with childhood friends. And the connections are not just for social and visiting reasons. They actually support each other financially and medically. Like they caregive for each other. If somebody can't afford to fix something, they'll pay for that person. They have a real connectedness within their group. The other thing I noticed when I watched this is the first episode, actually, if you watch the show, I noticed that they interviewed a lot of people that were in their 100s and they're over 100 years old. And one of the things that they were talking about is the idea of retirement is not the same there as it is here. When somebody retires here, I think we expect them to just lounge around and relax. But there, they don't use the word retire. They are changing careers. So the one man, I think, was a carpenter, and he was too old to be doing that kind of heavy work. So now he was a gardener. So he still had a strong sense of purpose and belonging in his life, even over the age of 100. They also talk a lot about the diets having, they're not vegetarian per se. A lot of them are not. They just eat meat in lower proportions than we do in North America. And a lot of the vegetables are grown themselves. So that gives them the benefit of doing the actual physical labor of the gardening, plus they will eat foods with less, I guess, chemicals and pesticides. So Loma Linda is the one that was in North America, and it's actually in a community of Seventh-day Adventist church, and there's several thousand people living there. And this one community has the health benefits similar to some of the other countries. And they found that there were a lot of the similar themes in this community. They ate mostly vegetarian diet with only meat on, 1 or 2 days a week. They might have been the vegetarian. Some of them are vegetarian, some eat a little bit of meat. They all believe in heavy exercise. Like they exercise daily. They lead really active lifestyles. They don't overeat. They don't eat a lot of junk food. They have a lot of community time together. They have a faith-based group. and they have a lower BMI overall compared to the rest of North America because of their activity and their diet. And they also do a lot of volunteerism, which helps them feel a sense of purpose. And they have a lot of sense of community with their group. This is Nicoya, Costa Rica. And I like that first sentence up there, that they spend 15% of what Americans do on healthcare, and they live longer. They're very healthy. One of the points here is that they have an easier culture as far as stress. They don't feel stressed the same way we might in North America. They have a good sense of humor. They also have water with high calcium levels, which prevents a lot of the fractures that we would see here. One of the other things I noticed, mainly in the first episode, which was Okinawa, is that they don't use chairs when they're eating their dinner. They sit on their floor cross-legged. So they're up and down off the floor all the time, and they keep that strength in their lower body that maybe we would lose here. A lot of beans and food in their own garden, unprocessed foods. This is Sardinia, Italy, and this is the place with the oldest people in the world. And they have the highest number of centenarians in the entire world, and especially men. And some of these communities, they didn't have a difference between male and women life expectancy, which I thought was really interesting, because I've always, my whole life, known that in this country, women will live longer than men. I mean, just go to a retirement home. It's 10 women for every man there. So they also eat a lot of mostly vegetables, and they eat meat, but not as often as in North America. And they drink a lot of red wine, but I don't think it's the same kind of red wine we get here. But they have a lot of flavonoids in their red wine. They have a lot of. They are also a bit separated from the main part of Italy, so they have connections as well in their own community. I should tell you though, the episode about the people who live in Italy, they're up on a mountain, they're up on the top of a mountain, and like these people who are in their hundreds are walking up these steep hills and down and up, and I thought, oh my goodness. And yet they don't fall. They've got strong legs. They stay strong. Their hearts are healthy. Like it's actually been really good for them to grow up like that and maintain that level of activity. This is Icaria, Greece, and this is the fifth of the 5 blue zones where they have people live longer. So they eat a lot of fish, and they do a lot of exercise too. A lot of them do farming or fishing, and like they say there, they get a lot of fulfillment from the things that they're doing. Yeah, I don't know about their special honey. I didn't read more about that one to see what the honey was that would give them special properties for reducing cancer rates. So they did a summary of a summary of all of the health benefits and common themes amongst the 5 blue zones, and they found there was 9 main principles. The top row is the exercise. The second row is your outlook. The third one is your diet, and the fourth one is your connectedness to your community. So I'll just kind of quickly go through these. So as far as the exercise goes, the people in these communities don't actually exercise per se like we would go to a gym or make a plan to go play tennis or something. They just have it ingrained in their daily life. So if they're going to be gardening or walking to the store, they're going to be always walking and exercising in their daily life. And they say on average every 20 minutes during the day they're up and moving around. They don't just sit. They knead their own bread. They use hand-operated tools. They don't have a lot of electrical appliances. So they do a lot of more physical work. As far as the outlook goes, they do a lot of things in their communities that help them reduce their stress levels. The examples they give here are prayer, ancestor veneration, napping, having happy hour with your friends. They do a lot of things as an outlet for their stress. They have a sense of purpose. And this is just the same author, Bettner, who did the Blue Zone study. He just quoted in this article that he followed. There was a study in Canada following people, over 6,000 people for 14 years, and the people who had a sense of purpose in their life had a 15% lower risk of dying. So it's nice to have a sense of purpose with what you're doing. And then as far as the diet goes, they talk about wine at 5. So in all of the communities except for the Adventists were partaking in alcohol, but it was always wine and red wine. It's the only alcohol form that there's any evidence for it to be at all healthy. And they were mostly having 2 glasses a day or less, although one community was doing about 4 glasses per day. So I put a little asterisk there because I am going to come back later to the guidelines on alcohol for North America, which are a lot different. The Canada came out this year with a new guideline suggesting that no amount of alcohol is considered without risk. Yeah, I can't. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's the way it had changed. Yeah, it's new. Like even in the field of medicine, I've always gone with we always learned that the safe amount of alcohol would be 14 drinks per week for a man and 9 for a woman, and that would be equivalent to about 2 drinks a day for a man. Now they're saying that obviously your risk is dose dependent, so the more you drink, the worse it is for you. And certainly they recommend not having more than 14 drinks a week because that would increase your risk of other health problems. But yeah, now they aren't saying there's any safe amount to have, which is a different way of looking at it. Hmm. Flavonoids, yeah. Oh, sorry. The question, in case anyone didn't hear, was just about the guidelines changing to suggest that there's no amount of alcohol that's considered risk-free, and that it would affect a lot of businesses, including LCBO and other people who would sell alcohol to make a living. And also, the comment also was made that we can see in other cultures that drinking wine is considered to be a form of improving your health. So one thing that we'll kind of close up at the end with is that you could never pinpoint one specific factor for the health of all these people. It was always a combination of many factors because you can replicate one factor in other communities, but to have the longevity they have, you kind of need a combination of many factors altogether to help. Let's go on. But I will go back. I'll come back to the alcohol at the end. And the diet being plant-based, most of the people had a heavily plant-based diet and then occasional meat like 1 or 2 times per week. And I'm not suggesting anyone has to be vegetarian. I personally do love eating meat, but I do also love the idea of having like a meatless Monday or trying to add more legumes, meaning beans into your diet. Um, so that was there. The other thing they mentioned just in the last slide there is that the carbohydrates they're eating are not the processed type like you can get anywhere in any store in North America. They're talking about whole grain and foods that are, less processed than you could maybe buy. So the 80% rule is the rule where a lot of these communities are where people only eat until they're 80% full. They never want to feel overstuffed or like they've overdone it. So they do tend to have a lower caloric intake. And there's lots of studies showing that 20% reduction in your caloric intake can improve a lot of parts of your health. That's interesting. So then the last part was the connections with other people. So they talk about how they have very strong connections with their loved ones, including multi-generational families and communities where you look after each other. They talk about the sense of belonging, being in either a faith-based group or a community of people where you feel like you belong there and that you're not alone. Someone will care for you if you need it. And then the right tribe talk is just the point is about being with people who are like-minded, or the idea that you are what you're around. You will start acting the same way as people you spend time with. So if you're around smokers, maybe you'll smoke, or if you're around people who do risky behaviors, maybe you'll do that too. So they just talk about being engaged in a group of people who have the same values that you have. And you can see that all the time with people who join like a Facebook group to lose weight, or like a walking group, or you can join groups of people that have similar interests as you do, and you support each other. Okay, so this is just now coming back. That's the end of the blue zone section, and then coming back to North America. We know that we spend billions of dollars on gym memberships and diet programs, and there's lots of stats showing that people don't maintain that change. People will drop out from their programs as time goes on, and the benefit of any change that you make in your life would have to be maintained for several years to have any real health benefit. This is just I just brought this up from the internet about the lifespan in Canada. So actually Canada's better than USA, and that's even more than Mexico. And this one doesn't split up between males and females, but I did also pull a little quote from the internet that women do live till like almost 84 in Canada, and men 79 and a half. And then if you average those two together, since there's more females than males at that age group, then you'll get your average there of 82. And then what does the evidence say? There's so many studies, there are hundreds of studies. This is just to start talking about how this is just one person's take on it, just a different way of thinking about it, that Alzheimer's disease is possibly your brain losing its ability to have neuroplasticity. So the fact that as your brain can no longer change and adapt as much, that the idea is that this then leads you to have Alzheimer's disease or contributes to it. So that was just an interesting thought. So maybe Alzheimer's disease is not a disease, it's just the lack of neuroplasticity as you get older. So that, I'm sure there'll be more studies on that. I just kind of went through the different topics. Oh, go ahead. There is a lot of information about a gene called ApoE4, but actually it's not, when I was reading the articles, it's not a guarantee you're going to get Alzheimer's if you have that gene. They said it's just one factor amongst many. So you're a little bit higher risk. It's like if you have a parent with heart disease, your risk is a little bit higher than the average person, but you can still modify that risk by doing other things like not smoking and exercising and getting your cholesterol down. So there are genes there, but they're not a guarantee. They're like just increase your risk a small amount. Yeah, that's actually, if you look at, I have a paper I'll pull up, but they do talk about how omega-3 fatty acids do improve brain function. The three things that they mentioned that have been tested and proven are the curcumin, which is from turmeric, and the omega-3, and the third one I had never heard of, and I can't remember the name, but it'll come up in a few slides. Okay, so exercise. There were hundreds of studies on exercise, and some of them talked about aerobic versus strength training versus the combination. The bottom line is that exercise improves your brain's neuroplasticity. So it's this whole idea that physical movement, one of the reasons is because your blood flow increases as you're exercising and you get more blood flow to your brain. It's clearing things out, it's providing more oxygen. But there are it's actually synergistic. The more exercise you do, the better your brain is and your cognition. And I was looking at the exact amount you would need to do to actually have your brain function better. Yeah, these studies that improve your brain is right here. So basically, you need to exercise at least 3 times a week for at least 30 minutes. If you look at the Canadian Cardiovascular Society, they have always mentioned 150, like 30 minutes 5 times a week as their goal for people to have adequate exercise. And this study shows that on the top bar there, it talks about how, is that the one? Yeah, preserving versus improving. So for preserving your mental functions, that what you have now, you want to exercise at a mild to moderate intensity. So they talk about your 50 to 70% of your maximum cardiac output. We don't know, we can't measure that directly ourselves, but you can measure your maximal heart rate. Like if your heart rate, the calculation for your maximal heart rate is 220 minus your age is your theoretical maximum heart rate. And what you want to try and do is get to 50 to 70% of that maximum heart rate and maintain it for 30 minutes, 3 times a week. And if you do that over a course of 12 months, in this study over 12 months, people maintain their cognition. And if you want to improve your function, you would need to increase the intensity to be over the 75% of your maximum cardiac output for at least 3 times a week, 30 to 40-minute sessions. And then they also want you to have these high intensity intervals. Do you guys have you ever heard of that? There used to be a fad with these HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training, where people would maybe they'd be doing a light jog on a treadmill and they had to do bursts of running, or maybe you're doing a aerobics class and you do bursts of jumping jacks. You just do these little bursts in the middle of your workout. Of course, you don't want to do anything that would increase your risk of having an injury. Like I always say, start low and slowly build it up, whatever you're going to do. Because even if you're just walking, you're still doing a lot of benefits to your body. So diet. So there's a lot of stuff on caloric restriction, between 20 to 40% a lower amount than what you normally have. So this BDNF came up a lot in the studies, brain-derived, you got it, neurotropic factor, yeah. So that is one of these chemicals or hormones in the brain that is shown to help grow new brain cells or grow new dendrites or pathways along your brain cells. So that came up a lot when I was doing my reading. So it's something they can measure when they're doing studies as well. So there was an increased level of this hormone, brain-derived neurotropic factor, that helps you grow new neurons in your brain if you're exercising or if you're eating a lower calorie diet. Also, increased memory tests in humans, so they did a lot of studies were on rats or other animals. So increased sensory motor function of the learning in the rats. So there's the part about the omega-3. So there was this one study two studies actually. Omega-3 fatty acids, catechin polyphenols, I don't know what that is, and curcumin, they have shown that it can support cognitive processes. The other thing is, there's another study at the bottom there about high saturated fat and refined sugar diet. So they fed rats a really unhealthy diet, and they were found to have a decrease in those BDNF levels. And we haven't done that in humans, obviously, but possibly can extrapolate. There was a lot of articles about aspartame and artificial sweeteners. This particular study kind of grouped together sucralose, aspartame, acetylsulfamine, a few of them together. And they found that people they had 3 groups of people. One group had no aspartame or, artificially sweetened sodas. One group had 1 a day and one had more than 1 a day. And there was an increased risk of alcohol. They followed these people for 10 years, actually. They were all over 60 when they started, followed them for 10 years. And the people in the group that had the artificially sweetened soda had an increased risk of dementia. And they didn't find that in the sugar pop group, which is interesting. Yeah, I mean, sugar's not great for you for other reasons, but in this study, didn't lead to increased risk of dementia. Sleep is a really important factor. So there were so many articles, I didn't put them all up there, but there's lots of research on shift workers and different, like shift workers have, more cardiac events, and shift workers have higher rates of depression. There's a lot of health deficiencies that happen because you're not getting a proper sleep. This particular study just talked about people that were deprived of sleep for 24 hours, and these were all young people, and they actually had a decrease in blood flow to parts of their brain after being sleep deprived. And then also, like, being deprived of sleep also reduces your brain-derived neurotropic factor in your brain, which would decrease your ability to make new brain connections. So then I found this chart about the actual, I figured people might ask, what is the right amount of sleep to have? So here's a statement put out by, this is in USA, the National Sleep Foundation. They had recommendations, and this is from 2015, that's the most recent one. And they give you the average approximate number of hours you should be sleeping for your age. So if you are over 65, the recommendation at the bottom is 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night, if you can get it. I know that's not easy for people. I have a lot of patients who can't sleep at night. So here's the part on alcohol. So there's been a lot of studies. So there was a study by JAMA about 10 years ago where there was like a U-shaped curve where people who had no alcohol had a bit of a high risk. People who drank 1 to 6 drinks per week had the lowest risk of any health problems, and the people who were over 14 a week were the highest risk. So it was like a U-shaped curve. So having no alcohol wasn't considered to be the lowest risk group, which was interesting. And that was in people who did not have any memory issues. That was a study about people who had normal mentation. So that's been like, there's lots of people that have commented and given reasons why they think that is, lots of other confounding factors. But for sure, we know that binge drinking is increased with a higher risk of dementia. Now, they call binge drinking having more than 2 drinks at one setting. So a lot of the studies came out to discover that there's different factors for the drinking. It's not just about the total number per week, it's about how you drink it. If you're binging it, you're having nothing for 5 days and binging it all in one sitting, that's higher risk than having like 1 or 2 drinks each day, every day. And then I also have a little statement there from the American Geriatric Society, that's the USA. They're recommending 7 drinks per week or less if you're over 65 as a healthy level. And then this last part here talks about, there's a new study out from Harvard showing that people were over 72 and they all had mild cognitive impairment, which is like, you don't have dementia, but you maybe have a tiny bit of like memory loss or short-term memory impairment. And if the people who drank more than 14 drinks a week had a huge risk of going on to get dementia versus people who had less than 1 per week. Yeah, 1 drink a week. Yeah. So they compared the lowest group and the highest group, and there was a massive difference in the rates of dementia. So it is a gray zone about how much is a safe amount to drink, but definitely over 14 drinks a week is very high risk. Oh, they basically 1 drink is the way we think of it already. Like it would be 1 ounce of hard alcohol, it'd be 4 ounces of wine, it would be 8 ounces of a beer, like just like the usual way we think of alcohol would be 1 serving. Yeah. And this is the Canadian, the new their new guidelines saying that, like they kind of give it by color, like the top is green, that's having none, and they have a pregnant person off to the side, saying people pregnant shouldn't drink. And then 1 or 2 drinks is considered like a green to yellow zone. So they kind of give you like a risk-wise fashion. Yes, but like we said before, they don't give you a risk-free area except for the 0 drinks at all. This one doesn't specify, but if like in the studies, it was mainly for heart disease, stroke, blood pressure, like that kind of thing, and then the cognitive function. But I would have to pull up I'd have to click on this link and like read the background to figure out what they were referring to. I did read a bit about that. So the question was, does drinking more alcohol increase your risk of cancer? There are some studies showing that, but I don't know the exact details about how much, what's the threshold for increasing and which cancers it would increase. Certainly people with cirrhosis in their liver have an increased risk of the hepatocellular carcinoma, which is a liver cancer. That is a known fact, but I don't know about other types of cancers, unfortunately. This is the part I like the most, the cognitively stimulating leisure activities. So leisure, the next page I think is where it says what a leisure activity is. So basically, if you do activities that stimulate your brain, you will stave off dementia and keep your brain functioning really well. So they were associated with better memory, better processing speed, better executive functioning, less decline in overall cognition, language, and executive functioning. Okay, so let's go down. So here, a leisure activity is an activity you do that you do not need to engage in for your work or for your daily, like activities of daily living, like getting dressed in the morning or taking a shower, things that you're doing for your own happiness and enjoyment. And then the cognitive leisure activities require you to use your brain for something. So in the studies, they took away people that were like watching a TV show or taking a course online where you just sit and listen. They had to actually be engaged. And the examples they had were reading a book, and they say there that when you read a book, you have to use your memory, and you also stimulate visual and abstract thinking when you're reading these ideas. Playing card games, playing any game really, if you're interacting and having to think and make strategic plays. Playing a musical instrument is actually really high on the list. Oh, did you have your hand up? Oh, thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay. And learning a language was like, those are the two things that like really boosted your neural connections more than anything. And then any hobby activity that you're doing, like maybe you're going to be, building something or making a model of something, or you're going to paint something, like all these things where you're thinking really boost your brain activity. And then at the bottom there, novelty-seeking leisure activities had the greatest effect. So something you've never done. Let's say you sign up for that cooking class or that dance class, or let's say you travel is really high on the list for novelty seeking as well. You travel to a new place. Not everyone can travel, but if you can, that is one of the best things your brain can do. Summary. Neuroplasticity underlies the basis of learning as well as recovery from brain injury and neurological impairment. Okay. And so, but when you're looking at neuroplasticity, you have to have a holistic approach. It's going to be just a combination of all of many things that can help your brain. So it's the exercise, the diet, the activity, the social connections, the purpose in your life, doing novel things. So here I just made a list of actions that you can take to improve your neuroplasticity on a daily basis. So try to exercise for 30 minutes 3 times a week. Try to have 5 to 8 servings of vegetables and fruits per day. People get overwhelmed by that, and I just tell them, but it's not that much. Like a half an orange is 1 serving. If you have a whole orange, that's 2 servings right there. Or it's only like 1 cup of cauliflower. It's not a huge volume, really. If you have a salad, that's 2 or 3 cups. That's like 3 servings of vegetables right there. And try something new every day. And it can be something so silly, like, if you always go in your house a certain way, go a different way. Or if you go to one coffee shop, try a different coffee shop. Go to a new restaurant. You can change things up in any way. I was just thinking about how whenever my husband takes my car to get the tires changed twice a year, and then he leaves me with his car, it really messes up my brain, because I have to like think about how I do things differently, and where's his keys, so they're not attached to my purse. And then he doesn't have the automatic button. I got to figure out how to put the key in. Just a lot of thinking happens when you do something different. Maintain your relationships. A lot of people talk about having intentional relationships with people. And, during COVID, it was easy to let everything slide and you don't see your friends anymore. You don't get together as much. You have to make an effort and intentionally maintain your friendship with people that you haven't talked to. So maybe when you leave here, you'll call somebody up, or you'll send them a letter, or you'll send a quick text saying, I was thinking of you today, just to intentionally maintain your relationships with people. Try to sleep well. That is a whole big bag of worms, that one, because there's so many different factors for sleep. But if you can, try to sleep well. The worst thing for sleep is having blue light late at night. A lot of people's homes have like fluorescent lights and your screens have blue light. Try not to get any blue light in your eyes when you're getting closer to bedtime. Minimize alcohol and chemical sweeteners. Meditate. I never talked about that much in there, but meditation is, you can actually go online and just find how to meditate for beginners, and it's like a 10-minute program. And meditation actually is, I should have brought some more articles up, I just ran out of time, but there are things showing that it reduces your stress levels and it helps your brain function. And it's actually easy. And if you want to, if you want to use it in a spiritual way, you could even meditate on something like, "Be still and know that I am God." You don't. It can be any phrase, or it can be anything that you want it to be. And then the other thing is, don't retire from your life. You're still needed. There's still people who need you out there. There's things you can do. And that's the end of my talk.